Hi, everybody. Welcome to NewsNite for Friday, June 10th. Great to have you along. The Akron mayor's race is heating up. Don Plisquellic heating up with his press releases. Mike Williams heads to the Board of Elections. We'll talk about those. Kelley Williams-Bolar, the case that will never end, takes another twist, this one involving the judge. And does the Board of DD really need a levy on the ballot? Those stories and more next on NewsNite. Been a hot week, hopefully some hot conversation, so let's get to it. Great to have with us Steve Hoffman from the Akron Beacon-Journal. And as always, great to welcome freelance contributor and journalist Jody Miller. The Akron mayor's race is about 90 days away, give or take, at least for the Democratic primary. And this week, a couple of nuances. Mayor Plisquellic midweek holds a press conference, then sends out a press release stating that he didn't like one of the questions the journalist asked, and he just wanted a little more to say about it. Does this speak to his attitude of how things are going because he's in this hot election? Or is his personality really just taking charge here?
Well, I think the answer is yes.
In both cases.
Because it's unique. 20-some years, we've been covering him. This has never happened.
I think that he's, the sense I get from the Plisquellic campaign is that, they had this negative brochure against Michael Williams, attacking his record. Then they try to be positive with the press releases, using his office. He's trying to use his incumbency, which is well within the bounds. That's what incumbents do, for this positive economic development news. So when someone asked the question, I forget, can't remember exactly who it was.
Only 30 jobs.
Only 30 jobs having to do with this, the Helsinki company. This is part of their initiative to connect to these high-tech companies in Finland and elsewhere. Bring your investments to Akron, make Akron your headquarters, we like you, we have this great business incubator. And so he was highly incensed, and I think this is because the question tripped up this second component of his strategy, which is, hit below the belt with the brochures, which have this tiny little tagline paid for by the Plisquellic committee that you have to have a microscope to read. And then switch, when you want to go positive, switch, use your office, use the incumbency. We're doing all these wonderful things to attract jobs. Oh, by the way, forget that it's just 30 jobs. And in fairness to the mayor, 30 jobs in this economic climate is an accomplishment. There's no doubt about it. Making any progress, and that's what the voters got to understand when they compare the records of Mike Williams and Don Plisquellic is, for all his bluster and for all his thin-skinned qualities at times, there is progress.
Well, you're right, there is progress, and 30 jobs is 30 jobs. But I think there are a couple of issues at play here, one of which would be Don Plisquellic, I think, knows that Mike Williams is planning to campaign on keeping jobs here, retaining jobs here. That's what the video that he has on his website shows. Let's keep the jobs we have. We don't necessarily have to go outside to bring jobs in here. Let's just make sure that the ones we have stay here. So I think the mayor may feel he's vulnerable in terms of all the travel that he does, all over the country and all over the world, in terms of Finland, in terms of China, in terms of Germany. So I think he's vulnerable in that respect. But I think it speaks to an attitude I'm seeing in the mayor that I'm not really fond of, and that would be anytime he's questioned about anything. He gets caustic, he gets angry, he gets defensive. And all he had to say was, hey, you know what? It's 30 jobs, and we're grateful to have 30 jobs. He didn't have to come out a week later, send out a press release pilloring this reporter who literally was just doing his job, just getting information out there to the public. And I think it speaks to the mayor just becoming just a little bit more defensive than I think he needs to be.
And this is the contrast Mike Williams wants in the campaign. Mike Williams wants to turn at least some of this race on style. That as his brochure and his video, I think, is an effort to I'm calm. I am sitting here in this video. I'm sitting here in the kitchen. I don't have my suit coat on. I'm kind of conversational and rational. Now, I don't know who the heck's going to watch 10 minutes of this on the web, but
I did.
Well, I did too. And that's his problem. Is going to how do you drive attention to that kind of campaigning? Nobody knows. I mean, the web is, as I noted in the column this week, the web is certainly a tool for fundraising. It's certainly a tool for organizing. What the political cognoscenti are trying to figure out is this, can you drive your message in this way? And no one's really sure. So Williams is going to try. It was I called it a negatively positive message. I mean, there are a lot of barbs in there. I mean, you know, I was glad that Mike Williams in his video did note Goodyear and Bridgestone for the bashing that he's doing on the mayor for some smaller companies leaving Akron for other area cities. He did admit, you know, Goodyear, Bridgestone staying, and I don't know. It's kind of I was left wondering what Mike Williams would really do. He wants to reorganize the Economic Development Department. Well, this sounds like, you know, Ward 1 councilman. You know, when I get in there, I'll reorganize. Well, you know, okay, fine.
Well, but he also, in the video, he also took to task the mayor's campaign piece, saying that it distorted his campaign, his record, that they were using, that the business of council is done in council meetings, and that his percentage of attending council meetings is almost 100%. It's the committee meetings during a 2-year period of time that the mayor's campaign has latched onto, and saying that Williams is not doing his job. Well, in the same sense, a lot of the work behind the scenes happens at those committee meetings that Williams didn't attend, but he did take some pot shots at Plisqualik's campaign piece.
Williams supporters have always been impressed by his oratory skills. Mike Williams likes to talk. Not that the mayor doesn't, but Mike Williams likes to talk. He's got a lot of personality, and I see in these videos a lot of script. Not that it necessarily has to be FDR's fireside chat, but does he have to get back to the conversational delivery to really connect with those independent voters?
Well, I think what he's trying to do is be contrasting to the mayor's style. I mean, if he can show this calm demeanor, this, you know, I listen to everybody, I'm a kinder, gentler version of what you might want for the mayor, I think it would bode well for his campaign, because I'm sure that, you know, the mayor makes headlines when he not necessarily brings 30 jobs to Akron, but when he sends out a press release to pillory a reporter.
Yeah, the real cheap shot in the brochure, I think, against Mike Williams was leadership. You know, I mean, he's headed council committees. He's worked for a bank. He's works for a housing
Alpha Phi
Homes. So, I mean, come on. I thought that was a real cheap shot. It's going to be interesting to see as this goes forward. You know, this is not about independent voters. This is a Democratic primary, which in Akron is the election, and this is a subset of voters. I can't imagine many independents are going to come in and register as Democrats and really vote in this primary. There may be a few. Certainly, so this mailer from Williams went out to only about 15,000 households.
The mailer from Williams?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So that gives you an idea of the subset of voters that we're really fighting for here. So I don't know. You know, all this messaging back and forth, it may all boil down to, in the end, just a simple get out the vote organization. I mean, this may be what it boils down to.
So the next 30, 60, 90 days up to this Democratic primary, are we going to see more mailers, more videos? Where are we going to see them concentrate their efforts?
I think you'll see a tremendous effort behind the scenes on get out the vote. I really do. But I also think that you're going to see mailers. They're relatively cheap. The videos are relatively cheap. I think you're going to see the mayor go to press conferences. The question is, does the mayor go on TV? And I don't know. We'll see. It's very expensive to buy Cleveland TV. No offense, but it is very, because it's a huge market, and you're just looking for a slice of Akron. So that's my big question: whether the mayor or Michael Williams ends up on Cleveland TV.
Will they start putting polls out?
Sure, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially because both of them have hired some very high-powered political pundits who that's how they know if they're reaching the voters or not, and whether the message is getting across.
I want to talk more about this question that set the mayor off, and we'll do that right now as we move the conversation over to newsnight.net.
For more NewsNight content, including extended discussions, full interviews, and the chance to speak your mind about the issues, join us online at newsnight.net.
The Summit County Board of DD is going to ask voters to renew a levy, even though it has a $66 million surplus. It's causing quite a controversy. Earlier this week, Jody had a chance to sit down with Tom Armstrong and Bill Ginter from the DD Board to talk about the levy.
Why a levy and why now if you've got $66 million in the bank? Explain that, if you would, to our viewers.
To my earlier point, half of that is what should be left in the bank by a levy agency, meaning that you're planning over a 6-year cycle. In this case, it's actually almost 8 because we don't go on the ballot, we don't get the new dollars until 13, so it's through 2018. And prudence would say that you don't know what's going to happen to an agency over a 6 or 8 year period. You need to maintain a balance in the bank should some disruption come in your funding. And in the event that you don't get renewed, you don't want to have to shut the doors on your consumers the day after the election. So half of that is what would be required to be prudent. The rest is dollars that we set out to start banking 6 or so years ago, so we wouldn't have to come to the community and say, look, we need even additional dollars to continue to maintain a no waiting list. We will burn off those dollars over the life of the cycle because what will come through at 4.5% would not be sufficient to fund operations for that period of time. We'll have to be using up those levy dollars that have been put in the bank.
We'll spend about $48 million of that fund balance over the next 7 years.
A lot at stake with this issue and a lot of personalities fighting on both sides. Let's get to it. I'd like to welcome Phil Trexler now from the Akron Beacon-Journal, and Steve will rejoin us in a moment. And Jody, your entire interview is available right now over on newsnight.net. But, you know, when you talk about money and $66 million surplus, that's enough for some people. They don't think you need any more money. But
the problem is they do, and they make a very valid case, which is why I hope viewers will, in fact, go and listen to the entire interview. $66 million surplus over a 6-year period of time with this levy gives them what they are required, half of what they are required to have. In other words, their budget is $65 million a year. They are required as a levy agency, okay, a levy-funded agency, to have half of their yearly budget in the bank in the event that funds dry up, in the event that another levy doesn't pass, so that they don't close their doors, actually. What this agency has done over the past 6 years, they went back to vote. They went to voters 6 years ago, got a tremendous increase in the levy, but they did it based on the fact that they promised that there would be no more waiting lists, that they would be able to service all of the 4,000 individuals and families in the community who, in fact, needed their help. The most vulnerable among us, as we put it, and so they got this extraordinary amount of money. They have no waiting list anymore. They're one of the few agencies in the state that doesn't have a waiting list. They service their clients in a tremendous way. They have also cut staff. They have tightened their belts and have been able to save from that levy 6 years ago that $66 million surplus. The problem is, they are going to be losing 40% of their funding from the state because we know that the state is cutting local government funds and all kinds of funds all over the place. So they'll lose 40% of what they get from the state. They're going to have to rely on that surplus. There's a possibility of tax rates going down because property taxes are being reevaluated and in Summit County and reassessed. So what they are doing is, I think, being very prudent and being very wise in terms of having money in the bank to use to continue to provide the services that this community wants them to provide.
But Phil, do voters actually look at those details, or they just hear $66 million surplus in this economy, you don't need it?
And I think that's what the MRDD needs to do is to explain, show us the budget cut. Show us the belt tightening that you've done over the years. 6 years ago they got that increase was 60% or 50% increase they got 6 years ago. I think there's some on county council who are concerned about the steepness of the levy and the request and the balance that they're carrying. And I think the MRDD folks need to tell the public, why they need it, the cuts that they've made, and why this is essential. And part of it came out in Jody's interview with him. Since
it's just a renewal, will voters do their homework?
No.
Well, no, but
they won't. They'll see the MRDD and they'll pass it just like they do libraries and other social agencies. Those are always slam dunk, it seems. They do. They pass all the time, and I don't know if MRDD's ever been denied at the polls.
But the best thing is, too, it's also a renewal. One of the things that they talked about was the fact that they do have the surplus, so they don't have to go back to voters and ask for additional funding.
But they're coming back 6 years later.
Well, yeah, but the levy runs out this year. They've got to come back. They've got to have
and their
that
funding's
money.
going to be cut. I understand. understand that, but I still think I would appreciate as a voter if they show me the cuts they've made in comparison to other government agencies that, you know.
And that's exactly what they are prepared to do.
And I'll be surprised to see it.
What, you will be?
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to explain it. I think they're going to throw the initiative on the ballot. And well, I hope that they do explain it. I hope they do show the cuts that they made, because plenty of government agencies have made plenty of cuts. Private sector, public sector cuts have come, and I'd like to see the proof as the cuts that they've made.
Well, and you will see that.
Good.
Okay,
Good.
They have been probably the most fiscally responsible social agency we have in this community.
Wow.
And they are prepared to show that. And hey,
all right.
On Monday, Summit County Council was kind of wavering about this.
Right.
By Thursday, when I sat down with Tom Armstrong and Bill Ginter,
Good.
Summit County
well,
Council,
I hope they explain it as well
convinced.
to the voters that they did to the county council.
Well, I will. I'm sure that they will, because, of course, you know, it's a need in this community. And it's one of the benefits of this community.
Absolutely. But these are hard times, and you know, more
They are hard times, which
right.
is why this levy has to be renewed, because there is nothing. These people need our help.
Okay.
And without the levy renewal, they're not going to get
Right.
it.
I just remember, you know, 6 years ago, and there was a steep increase that they got at
And
a time.
look at the services they provide.
But
this
how
year.
can you
I
get
understand that it was a huge increase they got 6 years ago.
Yeah, and they have used it well.
And they have a $66 million surplus.
But you know what? If the bottom fell
$66
out,
million surplus.
that would cover them for
that's mind-boggling.
That would cover them for 1 year, Phil.
But they're not out of money. They have a $66 million surplus, and they're continually generating money. They get funds.
If the levy doesn't pass, what do you want them to do?
Voters are going to look at the $66 million and say, hey, that's an awful lot of money to have in the bank.
Yes, it is. Thank
Right.
God that they were fiscally
Right.
responsible, and they do
Okay.
have it in the bank.
Wow.
You guys are fun.
Don't make me out to be anti-MRDT. I'm a taxpayer. I am not. I'm a taxpayer, and I want to see my tax dollars being used.
Well, then do the
prudently,
research.
which
Do the
is rare.
research as what voters should do,
Okay.
and understand that this is an organization that is well run, fiscally responsible, and does a tremendous job for the community.
I appreciate the work that they do.
Thank
I
you.
just want to make sure they're
Back
fiscally
up a second here.
responsible.
I asked you initially, once before this, will voters do their homework?
No.
Voters never do their.
All right, so
well,
if voters aren't going to do their homework, what good does it really do for them to go out of their way to try to explain this if voters aren't really going to do their homework anyway?
Because there's 10 or 20 voters out there who really want them to do it. You know, there is a minority. They still have to do it. And I'm sure that
To spend the money on mailers, to spend the money
local
on...
media are going to be asking the same questions.
Does this put extra pressure, though, on the Beacon Journal? Because the broadcast outlets probably aren't
Right.
going to do much depth on
Right.
it. Does this put a lot of pressure then on the newspaper, the traditional news source, Phil, to explain this?
Yeah, and I know the Beacon Journal will. You know, we'll delve into their books, and they'll, you know,
Let me ask you,
they'll show the
this is going to be on the November ballot?
yes.
The attitude of Ohio voters, local voters, when they go in the November ballot. This is the repeal for Senate Bill 5. Comes up this. People are going out just to vote against something. Some will.
Good point.
And I'm wondering how that attitude will compare to other things that are on that same ballot. If you're already in a vote it down mode, repeal it mode, will that carry over to things like a renewal levy for a group that has a $66 million surplus?
Now, renewals traditionally do well anyway, so.
Well, and both Tom Armstrong and Bill Ginter assured me that they were going to be very, very clear in their campaign. They were going to make sure that people understood what it is they do, how responsible they have been, and the fact that, you know, it's not really, it is a $66 million surplus, but it's not really a $66 million surplus, because when you think of how they're going to have to spend the money over the next 6 years in the life of the levy, if it's approved, they're going to spend down, as Tom says, $40 million of that $66
Are you
million
trying to say
surplus.
Don't penalize them because they did well with their money?
Yes, absolutely. And not only did they do well with their money, but they did well in this community, because there's nobody now on a waiting list with a developmental disability who needs assistance. Whether you're an infant who is born with cerebral palsy, or whether you're going to Weaver Workshop, or whether you're in a group home, this is an organization that has done a tremendous amount of good for the most vulnerable among us.
For all of the good work and the good savings, I think many are with Phil. They want to see how that good work and good savings
Show
was.
us how you've done more with less.
Show
They
me the
will.
money.
They will.
All right. Thanks so much, and we'll continue this in future editions of Newsnight.
On NewsNight.net, we cover a broader range of topics than we can on the air in 27 minutes. Be part of the conversation on our Facebook page and at NewsNight.net.
Just a week ago, we talked about the Williams case, in this case, Ed Williams. Well, since our last broadcast, he was convicted, sentenced to a year in prison, and now, as Phil, you write in today's Beacon Journal, Kelley's case takes yet another twist. We need some soap opera music, I think, for this, because it's becoming a weekly soap opera. What is her camp asking for now? Well,
her attorneys are pretty ticked off at Judge Patricia Cosgrove, who last week told me in an interview, ironically during the lunch break of Williams-Bolar's father's welfare fraud trial, she told me that she felt duped by Kelley Bolar's...
On the record?
On the record, yeah. Okay. We had an interview there. It came on the day that we learned that the judges wrote a letter to the jurors, commending them on their verdicts and telling them that the judge had received a lot of criticism, but that, then she goes into Kelley Williams-Bolar's college work and basically says that the Bolar is misleading everyone into believing that she's close, one semester shy of graduating and becoming a teacher. Well, the attorneys fired back saying, number one, the judge was, acting inappropriately for commenting publicly on Bolar's case while an appeal is pending, and also the parole board hearing is next month, and they're asking her to recuse herself. She still oversees Bolar's probation status here and there, and they're asking for the judge to recuse herself and step down voluntarily. Because they believe her comments were inappropriate. Secondly, they're saying that you do not have to be in the College of Education in order to graduate and become a teacher. And a review of the Ohio Department of Education bylaws say that's true. Bolar can become a teacher. I mean, it comes down to how you define teacher, but she can become a teacher.
Because there are different licenses?
There's different license procedures and licenses that you can attain. So she wants to work with special ed kids. She's a senior at Akron U. There's no anticipated graduation date, but, I mean, can she become a special ed teacher? Yeah, I guess it depends on how you define special ed teacher. There are different various roles in that in that area. But so anyways, they're ticked about that. They're saying that she is, in fact, intent on becoming a teacher, and she is on that course.
Well, the point, I think part of the point here is this was a felony conviction, going back to the prosecutor's office pursuing this. And whatever she decides to do, whether it's be a teacher, whether it's now or 10 years from now, or 5 years from now, or any other kind of job, you've still got this felony conviction hanging over your head. And so this all goes back to the question of, why the heck did we ever get this far with this thing?
Right.
And, I do think that this has been a very emotional ride for Judge Cosgrove. I tend to think with judges, it's the old rule with, I guess, with newspapers too, never complain, never explain. I mean, yeah, you're better off with, I think, in the judiciary of just kind of really speaking from the bench, let your record speak for itself, let the journal entries speak for themselves, and just, I'm not sure it's the wisest thing for Cosgrove to respond.
But now that she has, does it make sense? Do they have a case on the Williams-Bolar side to say we should have another judge going forward?
I would think so.
Yeah, I think it's highly unusual for a judge to comment so publicly on a case that is still before her on appeal. The critics of Cosgrove were saying she's flying with the wind of public sentiment. When Bolar was sentenced, the judge scolded her, saying, "You have these felonies, you can never become a teacher now, bad girl." And then this media frenzy comes about afterward, and the judge said she's inundated with phone calls and emails critical of her. So then she comes back later and says, "Okay, I'm going to write a letter on Bolar's behalf, urging the board to give her leniency, that she doesn't necessarily, and also too that she won't not have an inability to have a license because of a felony conviction because it's nonviolent." And now she's coming back again. Once the tide has gone against Bolar, she's now saying that Bolar duped me into doing all this. So the judge is swaying, and the public is aware of that, and her critics are saying that the judge probably just needs to step back from this thing and just let it run its course.
I agree with Phil. I mean, this does not look good. This looks like you lick your finger and put it up to the wind and then decide what to say, and that is not how you want to appear as a judge. And again, Kelley Williams-Bolar is not a very attractive figure in this respect. I mean, she did give the impression that she was very close to becoming a teacher. For most people, that means getting a proper certificate, doesn't mean special ed, doesn't mean being a substitute teacher. You know, she skated. I mean, this appears to be typical of her conduct. You know, that she skated right up to the edge. It's not a very attractive feature. But that said, you know, Cosgrove may feel she was duped, may feel she was misled. Best thing is just to be, you know, be quiet.
Is it reasonable for the public to be skeptical, though, of anything she says about her education, because she has made comments in writing that she was deployed with the military, which we know were not true, that her kids were living with grandpa, which the videos show were not true. The previous statements in writing and in public have come out to be not true. So why would her camp be so offended that the judge and others would really not take her at her word that she's that close to being a teacher?
Well, I think they're offended because, number one, is the judge is speaking publicly about an issue
Right.
about her teaching, when that's really not even the issue at hand. I mean, this is about her kids going to Copley-Fairlawn schools, and now it's becoming, you know, let's tear down Kelley Williams-Bolar even more by talking about her schooling. I mean, she is a single mom who's working a full-time job, who's, you know, attending classes, trying to get a degree. Now, she's been doing it since 1988, apparently. And she's a senior with 120 credit hours, but apparently no anticipated graduation date. Okay, all right. What does that have to do with the residency question?
But your article is the first I've seen of any real details of enrollment dates, credits, any of that.
Yeah, and that didn't come out. None of that's come out. I mean, Bolar apparently signed some paperwork to keep that stuff private. Right. It's her right to do that. But when she's gone on probation and they're preparing for the parole board hearing, those records come into play, and the judge has seen those for the first time.
You got that information from?
I got the information from the judge and from other sources who have seen her records, and you know, she's got a ton of credit hours. She's technically a senior. She has a major, but she's not in the College of Education. And as her attorneys point out, you don't have to have a degree from a College of Education.
It's her private business, but she brought it up at sentencing, which is why it's become more of a
well, she brought up other things at sentencing too, but. I mean, do we need to still be talking about her college and her teaching aspirations 6 months later? I don't know. Well, do we need to be even talking about this case 6 months later?
But we are.
We are.
We just can't help it.
People love it. I tell you, it's such a polarizing issue. Yeah. You know, the top comments on Ohio.com.
And we'll continue to talk about it until it's resolved. Phil, Steve, and Jody, thank you so much, and we'll see you next Friday for NewsNite.